Part 198. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1971. Bai Erlang, who had been waiting in the cafeteria for a long time, ran to the observation tower to take a look. No one saw him, but he saw the book that Bai Shan had dropped. There are only two situations in this world that can make Bai Shan drop his book. One is an accident that he can't control, and the other is full of treasures. He didn't think there would be an accident in the palace that he couldn't control and they didn't hear anything, so he turned and ran to Manbao's yard to find someone. As soon as they entered the yard, they saw two people sitting in front of the window talking. They didn't know what they were saying. He ran up and shouted to the two of them through the window, "What are you doing? Why don't you go to dinner soon? It's getting cold." Bai Shan got up and said, "Let's go, eat first, and then I'll check the books in the Chongguan Museum. If I can, I'll go to the Honglu Temple. They should know more about the western regions. Just borrow some paperwork from there." Then Honglu Temple was in charge of the diplomatic ceremony. The documents in it, especially some intelligence work on foreign countries, were secret, and Bai Shan was afraid that it would be difficult to borrow them. Bai Erlang on the side was confused. What are you going to investigate in the western regions? What did he think of? His eyes widened. You are going to the western regions? Bai Shan glanced at him and said, "Don't make a fuss, that's all we have planned, and it will take another year or two to make the trip. Don't say it outside." Bai Erlang, "Then you won't be an examiner." Bai Shan said, "The examiner is not in a hurry, but before I leave, I will try the Jinshi examination." Bai Erlang couldn't help but mutter, "You have passed the Jinshi exam without going to the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Personnel to take the exam. It's simply a scumbag." Bai Shan glanced at him and said, "You can take one." Bai Erlang just wanted to say that he wouldn't go to waste, but Man Bao already nodded and said, "It's okay to give it a try. Isn't there a Jinshi exam next year? I told my husband, you all have to give it a try." Shirojiro. Bai Shan was also a little startled. The exam next year? Man Bao said, "There is still 1 year and 2 months. If you don't take the exam next year, do you have to wait until the year after? That would be 2 years and 2 months, and next year is sure to take the Jinshi exam. Is there any later? Not sure yet. Jinshi examinations are not as fixed as Mingjing and other subjects. They are held every year. Basically, only the officials believe that the officials in the DPRK are getting older, or because of some well-known reasons, there are a lot of middle and upper-level officials missing. Jinshi will only be offered when the corresponding talents need to be replenished in 20 years, or even more than 10 years. Otherwise, it is usually opened every 2 years. Sometimes the imperial court will postpone it or cancel it outright under the excuse of insufficient funds. Fortunately, Jin's Hike does not have the willfulness of canceling it at any time before, but there may be an accident when it happens, so Man Bao believes that this kind of thing should not be too late. Well, it's okay to fail the test. This time, not only Bai Erlang, but also Bai Shan's scalp was numb, regretting that he had said too much. When the three returned to the cafeteria, their expressions had already been adjusted, except for Man Bao. Both Bai Shan and Bai Erlang had a heavy aura. Yen Or looked curious. What happened? He thought it would be Zhou Man who was listless, but now that she is in good spirits, it is Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. Why are their branches and leaves drooping like a tree without water? Bai Shan and Bai Erlang shook their heads together, indicating that there was nothing wrong. Man Bao has already opened his food box. Hurry up and eat. After you finish eating, you can read the book. I have to go to work. Yen Or nodded. Feng Zonping, who was sitting at the next table, was unbearable, turned his head and asked her, "You are going to be on duty now? Don't you only work on holidays?" Man Bao replied vaguely, "I've grown up too, so I should be on duty." Don't say that. Feng Zonping doesn't believe it, Even Zhao Liaolang doesn't believe it. The two of them wanted to inquire about something. Bai Shan looked up at them and said, "Do you have any clues about the homework assigned by Kong Jiju? After a while, it's better to go. Looking for books in the library?" Feng Zonping and Zhao Liaolang's expressions froze. Yin He smiled slightly and continued, "I rummaged around in the afternoon, but I found a book with notes, but unfortunately it's not detailed enough. I want to look for it again. If I can find some adults from the Daibao, some of our related articles would be good." Feng Zonping, "You haven't looked for Dibao yet? That would take a lot of time." Bai Shan said, "The Confucian sacrificial wine will only be requested in the late 10 days. But the topic was so difficult, how could he even understand it?" Zhao Liaolang silently poked at the meal in front of him, not interested in Zhou Man's affairs. Feng Zonping was the same. On the heads of the two of them, it should be said that everyone who raised their ears to listen seemed to slam a big rock down on their heads, directly crushing them so that they could not breathe. While eating, Man Bao thought to herself, until the queen gets better, she should still eat in the imperial hospital or the harem. After the meal, the two sides parted ways. Man Bao expressed that he seldom returned to the Chongqing Museum recently, and even had to use the meal in the harem and the Taiyuan hospital. Bai Shan expressed his understanding and asked, "We will help you eat your meal." Man Bao, "Can't you tell the cafeteria to stop?" Bai Shandao, "No, the dining room of the Chongqing Hall and the imperial dining room of the Taiji Hall are separate. Your share will not be transferred there. It is a waste to keep it anyway. Let's help you eat it." Bai Erlang, who was still downcast at first, immediately regained his energy and nodded again and again, "Yes, yes, your food is better than ours, and it is just enough to nourish our body." Man Bao had no opinion, and waved his hand in agreement. She went back to the imperial hospital first, and it happened that Xiao Yuanzheng and the others were having dinner, and when they saw her coming back, they pointed to her portion. Man Bao refused, intending to keep it as a late-night snack, and then put it on the stove to warm it up. Xiao Yuanzheng said, "The queen fell ill once today, but her temper was surging, causing her lungs to become hot and dry. Now she has started to cough. I see that it will be very difficult to endure the first half of the night. You and Imperial Physician Lu will be on duty in the first half of the night or the second half of the night." Man Bao glanced at the dark blue in Xiao Yuanzhen's eyes and asked, "What about the Queen Mother?" "There are Imperial Physician Lu and the others," Xiao Yuanzheng said indifferently. "I have already arranged for them to go there, and Imperial Physician Zheng is also looking at Prince Gong, and I will be with Tai Physician Tan. The Empress Dowager is at the end of the shot and cannot be saved. They are just doing their best to obey the destiny, and the royal family has already prepared for her death." Prince Gong's side was not life-threatening, so Xiao Yuanzheng only assigned an imperial physician to go there. The four of them are directly in charge of the queen, and the rest are on duty in the imperial hospital, so as not to be instructed by other concubines or princes and grandsons in the palace, and occasionally go out to see the imperial relatives. At this moment, Xiao Yuanzheng felt that there were too few people in the hospital. He remembered something, looked at Zhou Man and Imperial Physician Zheng, and after a slight hesitation he said, "Our classes at the Imperial Physician's office are suspended, and the students are allowed to study by themselves. The palace is currently short of manpower, so there are not a few students in the office that have already. Can we take a prescription? Let them enter the palace to fight. Today's me is the same as the title. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1972. Only Zhenggu, Zhengxiao, and Lu Yunu in the imperial physician's office had experience in prescribing prescriptions. Everyone's eyebrows moved slightly, and they couldn't help looking at Zhou Man, Imperial Physician Zheng, and Imperial Physician Lu. Imperial Physician Zheng was excited, and Imperial Physician Lu also moved in his heart, so he couldn't help but turn his head to look at Zhou Man. Man Bao thought for a while, then nodded and said, "Okay, let them enter the palace to fight. Dr. Lu is good at acupuncture. You can stare at the Queen Mother. Both Zheng Xiao and Zheng Gu can help Dr. Zheng and us. Usually, I need to take a medicine, and I have to have a person from the Taiyuan hospital to watch it. There are still quite a lot of things." Xiao Yuan is nodding. The Thai hospital can also make a call, so that everyone will not be too busy, and it is easy to make mistakes while busy. Thinking of this mistake, Xiao Yuan Zheng sighed. If he hadn't been too busy to touch the ground some time ago, he wouldn't have noticed King Gong's abnormality when applying the medicine. It would have been better to have discovered it earlier. Even if 20 days early, the bones can be stretched before they grow well. Xiao Yuan Zheng shook his head, arranged the matter, and looked at Zhou Man and Imperial Physician Lu. "Are you on duty in the middle of the night or in the middle of the night?" Man Bao glanced at Xiao Yuan Zheng, whose eyes were blue and black, and said, "Let's stay in the middle of the night. She is still young, she can't sleep well at best, but Xiao Yuan Zheng and the others may die." Xiao Yuan Zheng was not polite to her, and nodded in response. When Man Bao and the others arrived at the palace of King Gong, the emperor was also in the queen's penthouse. He moved his office here. Today, he still goes to the court and goes to the study to work as usual, but once he has discussed the matter with the ministers, he will make a case for it. Waiting to move here. Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu didn't bother him either. They went to see the queen and found a place to rest in the outer room. Imperial Physician Lu showed Man Bao today's pulse case and the prescription he had prescribed, and asked, "Can you use medicine and moxibustion?" After reading the pulse case, Man Bao hesitated for a moment and then shook his head. "It's not suitable for the lungs to be hot, so it's better to stick acupuncture, wait for the fever to subside a little, and then add medicine for moxibustion." Imperial Physician Lu nodded, and the two discussed in a low voice the acupuncture points and positions that the queen would need to pierce in the evening if she was ill. Man Bao didn't hide his secrets either. He told Thai Dr. Lu all the acupuncture methods he had prepared in detail, and asked Thai Dr. Lu to help her with the details and selection. The two discussed for more than half an hour, and the palace maid who was guarding the room trotted out lightly. Before she could speak, Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu immediately got up and went in. Everyone was quiet, and when they entered the room, they saw the queen awake, but she was just a little out of breath, and it seemed that she didn't cough up. Man Bao reached out to touch her pulse and found that her palm was cold. Imperial Physician Lu was more experienced than her, so she didn't even need to feel her pulse. When she saw the queen's face and movement, she said, "I'm lost in phlegm, so I have to suck phlegm." Aunt Chang immediately rinsed her mouth. She had experienced it once, so she went to suck phlegm for the queen, but she didn't get it out after she sucked it twice. Man Bao opened the medicine box and stretched out his hand to pull the queen's shirt. Imperial Physician Lu turned his back and walked outside the curtain to avoid suspicion. He just turned his back to them and said, "You have to suck the phlegm out, or the Empress will get sick again, and it will be bad if she can't breathe." Man Bao quickly put down the needle and pointed Aunt Chang to suck phlegm. This time she sucked out some, but her face turned blue. Man Bao stomped her feet and thought about it, but she pushed Aunt Chang away and took it herself. She never sucked sputum for anyone, only anthropomorphic models. She used a simple sputum suction device bought in the mall, so she knew how to suck phlegm. How does the phlegm device work? But I don't know how people suck it differently. Aunt Chang and another maid of honor carefully supported the queen. Man Bao's hand deftly passed through her needle and pressed it on the queen's back, then pinched the queen's mouth, and when she closed her eyes, she poked in. She guessed the position of the sputum suction device, let myself fit as closely as possible, and still ask Keek in my mind, almost, go in a little more, you can suck. Man Bao's hand pushed hard on her back, and then sucked in her mouth. She immediately quit and spit out the phlegm in her mouth. Aunt Chang saw Daxi come out. The palace maid hurriedly handed Man Bao water to rinse his mouth. Man Bao rinsed his mouth and turned to check the queen's condition immediately. The queen's complexion improved, and her breathing gradually became smoother, but she coughed violently after a while, as if she was about to cough out her lungs. Man Bao hurriedly pulled out the needle stuck on her back and front chest, and then pierced her to relieve her cough. Imperial physician Lu listened to the voice and immediately instructed the medical assistants waiting outside, "Bring the Sydney throat ointment, 2 spoonfuls for the queen." After the queen drank the ointment and pierced the needle again, she lay down sweating profusely. Aunt Chang didn't dare to let her sweat to sleep, so she wiped her body dry and put on a clean underwear. Only then did Imperial physician Lu turn around and go around the curtain to check the queen's pulse. He asked some questions in detail, and after looking at Zhou Man, he retreated to the outer hall to speak. The emperor had heard the movement and came from the front room. He was standing in the outer hall waiting, and when he saw them coming out, he asked, "What happened to the queen?" Imperial physician Lu lowered his head and said, "My lady's qi disease is getting worse. Not only is the kidney qi damaged, but because the spleen is warm, the heat will enter the lungs as soon as you get angry. I'm afraid it will be difficult to cure. The queen's qi disease could not be cured in the first place." Obviously, what Lu Tai said this time could not be cured was lung disease. The emperor's face sank and asked, "What will happen?" Imperial physician Lu hesitated for a moment and then said, "It is very likely that it will become tuberculosis." The emperor's face was ugly, and Imperial physician Lu had to bite the bullet and continue to hint, "If the empress's qi disease cannot be controlled, it will be very dangerous. I am afraid it is even more dangerous than the queen mother's side." The emperor turned around twice, and finally looked at the two of them and said, "I don't care what method your imperial hospital uses, I must cure the queen. I need to tell Gu Zhong what medicine is needed. If there is none in the imperial hospital, I will let him find it." Imperial physician Lu and Man Bao looked at each other and reluctantly responded. As for whether they can be cured in the end, it really depends on destiny. Because the queen's qi disease is really dangerous, this is the third time she has wandered in the gate of hell twice because of this disease. One time it was said that the Buddha pulled her back, and the other time it was Zhou Man's acupuncture. Buddhism and Taoism were nothing but illusory things. As doctors, they didn't believe it. So this time, Imperial physician Lu still pinned his hopes on Zhou Man, and after dealing with the emperor, he took her aside to discuss. "What advice do you have on medication?" Man Bao thought for a while and said, "Let's adjust the lung heat first. I have a medicine patch that can relieve it." "Drinking medicine or treating qi disease?" Man Bao nodded, "You can't just treat the symptoms but not the root cause." But Imperial physician Lu frowned and said, "I heard the sound of my mother's coughing, and I already hurt my throat and lungs. I think I should try my best to adjust my lungs first. See you at 9. Thank you for your reward today, I am very happy today. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1973. Man Bao shook his head, "It should be more comprehensive. Lung qi is the main one. The medicinal patch plus acupuncture can relieve lung qi enough. What kind of patch do you have?" Man Bao wrote down a prescription for him to see. Imperial physician Lu said, "I have never seen anyone use this prescription." Man Bao said, "This is what I newly researched. Easy to use." Man Bao nodded and said, "Some time ago, my father had a fever and coughed. After 3 stickers, it was fine. He didn't even drink the medicine." Imperial physician Lu was surprised, "It's all your research." "That's not true. I added some medicines and changed the dosage of some medicines. This was indeed researched by her. Teacher Mo found her some ancient prescriptions from their era, which are real ancient prescriptions. The real paper is tattered and fuzzy, and it is displayed in a museum. Because Manbao's age is basically a basic disease, and if you are not careful, you will die, so teacher Mo occasionally finds some ancient recipes from some places to show her. One of them is about making medicine patches. After reading the introduction, Manbao thinks it is very good, because there is no need to take medicine. As long as the medicine stickers are applied, the lesions in the body can be treated by the skin acting on the body. Very friendly. It's a pity that the ancient prescription was badly damaged, and the philologists of that era only repaired more than half of it, and Manbao was still thinking about adding medicinal materials. She has an anthropomorphic model that can simulate the effect of treatment, and has countless disease data, so she can constantly adjust. Of course, there is still a little difference in how much the disease data is entered into the anthropomorphic model for testing, but she feels that the medicine can be used when it is inseparable. So she made the medicine patch herself. Not only did she provide some for Ji Shitang, but when her father coughed, she also posted 3 patches, supplemented by acupuncture, and the cough was temporarily stopped in 2 days. 5 to 10 days. Sometimes no cough does not mean that the lesions disappear. It is likely that it was suppressed so much that it could not lift its head, so it temporarily dormant, so the follow-up medication is also critical. However, generally only wealthy people who have money and a mind to take care of themselves do this. Even her father, even if she made the drug stickers herself, was afraid of spending too much money. Manbao strongly recommended. Although Imperial Dr. Lu had never seen the effect, based on her trust, she nodded and agreed. A more important problem is that the Queen has a variety of symptoms at this time, and it is difficult to take care of all of them with decoction alone. The best way is to use a variety of methods. Imperial physician Lu thought in his heart, and then came up with a prescription. Since the patch can adjust lung heat, then the decoction will adjust the spleen, kidney, and liver qi according to the trend. You can then use acupuncture to assist the efficacy of the medicine and protect the heart. Manbao probed into the prescription written by Imperial physician Lu, and found that he had changed several medicines on the basis of the original. After a little pondering, she found the key point. She nodded repeatedly. Your prescription looks much better than before, you can give it a try. So the two wrote down the medicine they needed to use and handed it over to the medical assistant to get the medicine. Imperial physician Lu also discussed with Manbao. Xiao Yuan and I are discussing privately, but if it doesn't work, I will use snow lotus to brew a plaster for my goddess and take it daily. Manbao said, it's too cold, the lady already has the disease of body cold, how can she use snow lotus again? There is no way to do this. She is suffering from lower cold and upper heat. Especially this time, the fire attacked the heart, the lung heat and spleen temperature surged up, the liver qi was blocked, and the kidney qi was damaged. If you don't suppress the lung heat, I am afraid. Manbao then whispered, it's not time to use tiger wolf medicine, just wait. Imperial physician Lu nodded, I just hope the treatment this time has some effect. Otherwise, even the tiger wolf medicine will have to be used, so save your life first and then talk about it later. After the medical assistant got the medicine, the two went to the tea room together after the examination, where they boiled the medicine and made the ointment. Making the ointment is much more troublesome than boiling the medicine, so the medical assistant helped Zhou Man. She didn't hide the recipe, and handed it over to him directly. The three were busy in the tea room, and in less than a quarter of an hour, the strong smell of medicine wafted out. When the prince and the princess came over, they could not help frowning when they smelled the smell of medicine in the yard, and hurried to see the queen. The emperor is holding the queen's hand to comfort her, saying that he will punish the third child severely this time, and he will never let him do such unfilial acts of self-harm, and comfort her that the hospital has found treatment. There is a high probability that King Gong's leg disease can be cured, so let her not worry about it and take good care of it first. The prince and the princess stopped, and the prince couldn't even hold back and snorted softly at the door of the inner room. What is the probability that it can be cured? The imperial physician clearly stated that there is a high probability that it will not return to its original state. But at this time, the queen was seriously ill, and the prince would not make it clear that she was worried. He cleaned up his expression, squeezed a smile on his face, and came in to greet her. The queen leaned on the pillow and laughed softly when she saw them. "Why did you come in? Be careful of your sickness." The prince said, "Where is it so squeamish? How does the mother feel?" The queen said tiredly, "It's much better. Even if you lie down, you feel like your bones are going to rot, but your father and imperial physicians won't let you get out of bed." The emperor patted her on the shoulder and said, "The imperial doctor said to take good care of it, then take good care of it." After the family said something, imperial physician Lu boiled the medicine first, and Manbao followed him and got up. "Let's go, I'll give you acupuncture to stimulate the properties of the medicine, and then take the opportunity to adjust your heart." She looked at the medical assistant. The medical assistant immediately said, "In another quarter of an hour, the medicine will be ready, and the ointment will be ready by then." Manbao nodded. "Don't use ice and water, let it cool down naturally, even if it's not cold, it's fine. The effect of this medicine patch is also very good. Medical help should be under." Manbao and the others handed over the tea room to him and the maid who helped, and brought the medicine to the queen together. The queen pierced the needle, and the emperor and the prince retreated outside. The father and son simply stood under the porch and said, "Have you been to see Mingda?" "Yes, she is in better spirits, and Zhou Man's medical skills are still very good." The emperor naturally agreed with Zhou Man's medical skills. He glanced at the inner room and sighed, "I hope her medical skills will be useful for your mother this time." The prince did not speak. The emperor pondered for a moment, and said to the prince, "Don't think too much about the third child, he just thinks too much and thinks that your mother and I have alienated him, so he came up with such a stupid way to attract attention, but he didn't. Thinking about it hurts myself." The prince is skeptical about this statement. How stupid does he think he must be to do such a thing? The third child is obviously not very stupid. He is much better at reading than him. He has been praised by his father and gentlemen for being smart since he was a child. He is not a 3-year-old child. Does he need such a method to attract the attention of his parents? See you tomorrow, I'll cut a cake. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1974. On the contrary, what Zhou Man said was more reasonable. He should have thought that the Taiyuan hospital had the ability to bring the crooked leg back, so he wanted to harm him, the prince, or Zhou Man. But Zhou Man is from the Chongguan Museum. Who doesn't know that Zhou Man is his man? When it comes to Zhou Man, there are ways to involve him again. However, the crown prince is not as angry as he used to be now. Perhaps it was because King Gong failed to lose money by stealing chickens this time, or because he was open-minded. Anyway, although the prince was dissatisfied with his father's words in his heart, there was not much expression on his face. He just responded lightly, and then said, "Father, although Xiao Yuanzheng is guilty of oversight, the root cause lies in the third brother. If the patient has a heart concealing the condition, unless the doctor is the reincarnation of an immortal, it will be difficult to know the inside story." The emperor frowned and replied lightly, "I will handle it as appropriate." The prince didn't say much, but at the end he couldn't help but say, "If the third brother is really not cured this time, my son will ask someone to go to Baiyun Temple to light a lantern to pray for him." Hearing the words, the emperor gritted his teeth, "Get out of here." The prince rolled away, rolled into the outer room, and sat directly on the couch to wait for the result. Manbao and his aunt served the queen to take medicine, and Manbao began to twist needles to give the queen acupuncture. After a quarter of an hour, she pulled out the needle, and the medical assistant brought the boiled ointment. At this time, the ointment was still a little warm, So Man Bao pinpointed the acupuncture point for the Empress to stick it on, and only put on 2 stickers. The Queen responded in a low voice and said to her, "You are tired today, go down and rest." She knows her own body, and the Queen also thinks that she will not be very stable this night. She just took the medicine and got the needles. Man Bao thought so too, so he called Imperial Physician Lu and the medical assistant to rest. They have a rest room in another side hall. Man Bao himself occupied the small room in the side hall. Imperial Physician Lu and the medical assistant lived together in the side hall. Imperial Physician Zheng also lived with them. It is the side hall where King Gong lives. When Man Bao was lying on the bed, he could still hear the voice of King Gong screaming in pain. Man Bao pouted, and when he hit the stick, both bones were broken. Can it not hurt? Fortunately, the bones are not very brittle, otherwise if they are broken. Man Bao shuddered, yawned, turned over and fell asleep listening to the sound of pain not far away. The Emperor and the Prince stayed with the sky until the sky completely darkened, and the Queen also fell asleep peacefully before leaving. Man Bao thought that he could sleep for an hour at most and the maid would wake up. Who knew that after she slept in the second half of the night, Xiao Yuanzhang, who came to replace them, was woken up by her. Imperial Physician Lu was very sleepy, and because he was worried, he didn't sleep very well. He brought Xiao Yuanzhang into the room and detailed the medicines and needles they were taking tonight. Xiao Yuanzhang was also a little surprised, lowered his voice and asked, "Have no one been called in the middle of the night?" "Yes, I listened to the movement, and the Queen didn't even cough." This was beyond Xiao Yuanzhang's expectations. His eyes slid over the 3 prescriptions, and finally his eyes were fixed on the medicine patch. "Is this a treatment for lung heat?" "Yes," Zhou Man said that it is to relieve cough and treat lung heat. Lu Tai sighed, "I didn't expect the effect of the medicine would be so good." Xiao Yuan nodded, looked left and right, and asked, "Where's Zhou Man?" Imperial Physician Lu said with a smile, "I have already asked the maid to call, and I am sleeping in the small ear room next door." Just as he was talking, Man Bao walked in with a worried look on his face. Xiao Yuanzhang just glanced at her and knew that she was still awake, and her eyes were still half closed. "But young people are like this, I feel a lot." Xiao Yuanzhang shook his head and whispered to the 2, "Wash your face, let's go see the Queen together." Only then did Man Bao wake up a little, and turned to wash his face. After washing her face, she finally woke up, so the 4 quietly went to the main hall, and quietly went in under the guidance of the palace maid to see the Queen. The Queen was not awakened, except that her breathing was a little unsmooth, and there was nothing wrong on the surface. Basically, as long as she doesn't cough or pant, she should be able to sleep peacefully. Xiao Yuan nodded slightly to the big palace maid who was serving, and the big palace maid stepped forward and carefully took the Queen's hand out of the thin quilt and placed it on the pulse pillow. Xiao Yuan was checking the pulse first, and after a long time got up and stood aside, letting Imperial Physician Lu and others take turns. Man Bao waited for Imperial Physician Tan to also take the pulse before he went forward to listen to the pulse. After a long time, he got up and nodded slightly to the maid. Everyone watched her put the Queen's hand into the quilt. The Queen's brows moved, as if she was about to wake up. When she came, the palace maid gently pressed the quilt, and patted the shoulder next to her. The Empress opened her eyes again, and her breathing gradually decreased. Xiao Yuanzhang breathed a sigh of relief, bowed and retreated. The 4 returned to the side hall to discuss their condition, so as not to disturb the Queen. When they returned to the side hall, they happened to meet Imperial Physician Zheng coming back from the opposite side with a tired face. Xiao Yuanzhang couldn't help but stopped and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Zheng Tai said, "It hurts to cry, 3 or 4 times a night, and he has been asking me to take painkillers, but it's not good to take too much painkillers. I only gave him a bowl in the evening. Still swollen." He sighed, if the palace people hadn't persuaded the queen to recuperate on the side and need to be quiet, there would have been chaos in the palace. Xiao Yuanzhang frowned slightly, and then said coldly, "The queen lives here, he doesn't dare to make a fuss, you don't want to give him too much painkiller, one side a day will do, mainly to reduce the swelling, strive to reduce the swelling within 3 days, we just start framing." Imperial physician Zheng responded and entered the side hall with them. The waiter had prepared a pen, ink, paper, and inkstone for them. The 4 of them tacitly wrote their own pulse cases. After they were written, they put them together for comparison. The 4 of them looked at them and found that they were similar. Xiao Yuan was looking at this pulse case and pondering, in this way, it is very likely that Niang's condition can be controlled. Imperial physician Lu nodded, then looked at Zhou Man, "This patch of yours is very timely. I wonder if there are other patches." Man Bao said, "Not yet, I will study it when I learn it, it should be there." If other doctors said this, they would definitely not believe Xiao Yuanzhang, thinking that the prescription is so easy to study. Some doctors struggle to develop their own prescriptions in their entire lives, most of them are improvements to the original prescriptions, but Zhou Man said. Xiao Yuanzhang nodded and encouraged, "I'll trust you, the medicinal materials that need to be used can be obtained from the Imperial Hospital." Man Bao happily agreed, which saved a lot of money. Xiao Yuan glanced at the hourglass and said to the 2 of them, "Okay, let's go back to rest and come back to work in the morning. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1975. Man Bao responded and went back to the hospital with Imperial physician Lu. The East Palace and Taiji Hall were separated, and the palace door was locked, so he could not walk around easily, so Man Bao did not return to Chongguan Hall, but lay down in his own small room in Taiji Hospital and continued to sleep. The next morning after breakfast, I saw Zhenggu and the 3. As soon as Man Bao came out, she saw Zhenggu and the 3 of them standing together in the yard with their hands together. She nodded slightly, then stepped forward and asked, "Have you eaten yet?" Except for Lu Yi's daughter, Zhenggu and Zheng Xiao were both officially entering the Imperial Hospital for the first time, and they were very nervous. When they saw the master, their hearts were only half relieved, and they immediately saluted, "Go back to the master, eat pass." Man Bao nodded, turned around and said, "Then come with me." Man Bao took them to the office and asked Imperial physician Lu, who was already sitting in the office to record his pulse, who is in charge of the 3 of them. Imperial physician Lu glanced at it, twitched the corners of his eyes and said, "Xiao Yuanzheng handed over this matter to Imperial physician Lu, but Imperial physician Lu was alone last night at the Queen Mother's side, and he is still resting now. That's what makes Zhenggu and the others wait." Man Bao lowered his eyes and thought for a moment, then turned his head and called for a medical assistant, "Take them to go through the formalities, and I will come and talk to Imperial physician Lu at noon." The medical assistant was stunned for a moment, then bowed his head and took the 3 of them down to go through the formalities. The 3 of them were also medical assistants when they entered the Taiyuan hospital. Liu's status as a doctor girl was finally upgraded from a doctor woman to a medical assistant, and one step further was the imperial doctor. Imperial physician Lu also glanced at Man Bao in surprise, and waited for the 3 of them to be taken down before he said politely, "After all, Xiao Yuan has handed over this matter to Imperial physician Lu. Wouldn't it be better for you to act like this?" Man Bao smiled and said, "It's all right, I'll talk to Imperial Dr. Lu of Xiao Yuanzheng." Imperial physician Lu raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling that the current Zhou man was slightly different from before, but he couldn't tell exactly what was different. Man Bao and Imperial physician Lu put the pulse records on file, signed the signature together, and then went to see the Queen. Before leaving, they also arranged tasks for the 3 of them, and asked Zhenggu and Zheng Xiao to help Imperial physician Zheng, while she personally took Lu with him. The doctor girl goes to the Queen. When they and Xiao Yuan were taking over, She casually mentioned this matter. Xiao Yuan looked up at her and said, I see, I'll tell you from Imperial Dr. Lu, you don't need to go. Man Bao nodded. Tai Tan yawned on the side, raised his eyelids to look at Zhou Man, then glanced at Tai Lu beside him, and went out without speaking. The treatment plan they gave the queen was better than expected. It may be that the medicine improved by Imperial physician Lu had a miraculous effect. It may also be that Zhou Man's medicine was well pasted, or acupuncture and moxibustion were well performed. Anyway, the queen's condition gradually stabilized. Man Bao taught Dr. Lu the method of acupuncture used by the empress, and in his spare time, he wandered over to take a look at King Gong, who was relieving pain and swelling. Seeing that he was being tossed so hard, Man Bao didn't go in, and wanted to pull her to give King Gong acupuncture to relieve the pain, but he disappeared as soon as he turned around, and then looked at the two nephews beside him. He didn't say anything. Although I know that they have been studying with Zhou Man for a long time, in case their pain relief effect of acupuncture is not obvious, they will be scolded by King Gong. Forget it, that's it, anyway, it hurts a little bit, but it doesn't hurt anyone. And if you can't bear the pain, how can you endure the bone setting after 2 days? You must know that one of his bones was slightly misaligned after being broken, and one of his bones was straight and crooked, and he had to stretch the bone. That taste, it's not much different from having a child with a woman. Imperial physician Lu only appeared when he was having lunch. He should have known that Zheng Gu and the three had been arranged. Although he didn't say anything, his face was indifferent. Xiao Yuan was assigning Dr. Lu to him and said, the Queen Mother needs acupuncture, and Dr. Lu is used to it. Let Dr. Lu take care of the Queen Mother for the past few days. Imperial physician Lu responded, and after eating, he took Dr. Lu and left. Dr. Lu glanced at her master quietly, then at her grandfather, then saluted and left, leaving with Tai Lu. Imperial physician Lu glanced at Man Bao, and waited until no one else was there before saying, you've been calculating, you all know that the fox and the tiger are arrogant. Man Bao smiled and said, Dr. Lu, she is my apprentice, but also your granddaughter. They are all family, why don't you take care of her? After all, to avoid suspicion. They're both working in the Imperial Hospital. It's hard to avoid suspicion. It's always okay not to let you be favored, but it's always okay not to let her be bullied by others, right? Imperial physician Lu said, you've said all your words, and you've done things. Can I still take it back for you? The main thing is that although he and Tai Lu have worked together for a longer time, in terms of relationship, it is better to be with Zhou Man. And what she said was not bad, even if she didn't show favoritism to her granddaughter, it was not easy for her to be bullied in the hospital. But Zhou Man's acting like this also made him feel a little strange. Although she was naive before, she knew the rules and would not make such obvious mistakes. It's just that before he could figure out how to inquire, it was time for King Gong to take his bones. The queen's health was much better at this time, even with Princess Mingda's body. The emperor was afraid that King Gong's movements would be too big to frighten the queen, so he excused the inconvenience of living here early in the morning, and then had the queen moved back. Tai Chi Temple. Mingda and Chang Yu went to accompany their mother. The queen's qi has not recovered, but she doesn't cough much. Even her temper and liver qi are better. Once the liver qi is good, the kidney qi will be smoothed out a lot, and it will be replenished occasionally. Therefore, when she sees her two daughters, her face changes. Fortunately, he waved his hand, pulled Mingda to his side and looked at it for a while, then asked, your face is still not very good, how does your body feel? Mingda smiled and said, it's much better, Zhou Mandu said that he can walk around, so I came to see my mother. The queen nodded slightly, and saw with sharp eyes that a red rope was hanging around her neck. She took it out and found that the bottom was a small purse made of colorful silk. It was half new and looked like it had been worn for a long time. Where did this come from? Mingda didn't expect that her mother would find out that she had already been put in the front of her clothes. Her face flushed instantly, and Chang Yu, who was beside him, pursed his lips and said, "It was given by Bai Chang," saying that it was the peace charm he had been wearing since he was a child. The Taoist temple near my home spent a lot of money asking for it, and it worked very well, and I asked Zhou Man to send it. Chang Yu smiled and glanced at Mingda, whose face was flushed, and said, "My sister took it at the time, and I put it on without a second thought." The queen was both happy and sad. She reached out and touched her hair and smiled. "All right, your father, the emperor, has met the Ren family and the Huo family in the past 2 days, and I heard that Bai Cheng's parents also, when they come to Beijing, they should be summoned in a short time." Mingda was stunned. Bai's parents came to Beijing. The queen nodded with a smile. "Your father told me this morning, and said that the palace is gloomy now, so your affairs can make people happier, so I want to make a decision for you as soon as possible." In fact, the emperor was afraid that the queen mother would really have something to do with it. In addition, the first 2 days for the queen were really dangerous. The emperor could only endure the burning of all his internal organs to do these things. He couldn't really delay the children because of adults. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1976. At this time, Bai Erlang and the others learned from Mr. Zhuang that his parents had come to the capital, and they were so surprised. "Why are my parents here?" Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, "What's so strange about this? Both of you brothers are in the capital, isn't it normal for them to come to see you occasionally?" He didn't tell him that Mrs. Lu sent a letter back to let Master Bai and the others come. However, Master Bai and the others came quickly enough. They should have left as soon as they received the news. Bai Shan and the others were in the palace, and Mr. Zhuang brought in the news of the family. Bai Erlang didn't know why Master Bai and the others came, but Bai Shan knew about it. "Your Majesty may test your homework in person again." Bai Erlang felt a little nervous, a little excited, but also very nervous. "Really?" Bai Shan reached out and patted his shoulder. At this time, the imperial physicians who had just finished their preparations all stood in front of King Gong. In order to facilitate the bone setting, they did not install the bones on the bed, but had someone lift Prince Gong to the couch in the room, where people could stand on all sides, which was very convenient for pressing. Xiao Yuanzheng and the emperor also borrowed 4 bodyguards. After all, their group of imperial physicians are either old or young, so Zheng Gu and Zheng Shao who borrowed have a little strength, but they have little experience and it is estimated that they can't hold back. As the emperor sent a guard over, he asked, "Does it hurt?" Xiao Yuanzheng said, "It will naturally hurt to straighten the crooked bones, but don't worry, Your Majesty, I will pay attention to it later." Man Bao comforted the emperor and said, "Your Majesty, rest assured, no matter how painful it is, it won't hurt to have a child. The pain that a woman can endure, Prince Gong should also be able to endure." The prince who came to watch the fun also said faintly, "Yes, now the third brother's suffering is not as painful as when his mother gave birth to him back then. This time, let him know that the pain is in the child's body and the pain in the parent's heart." Thinking of the queen's current condition, the emperor pursed his lips and did not speak any more. With a wave of his hand, he asked the guards to come forward and wait for the order. Xiao Yuanzheng and his subordinates assigned tasks. Dr. Zheng and Imperial Dr. Lu pull their legs. Zheng Gu, you and Imperial Dr. Lu side, try to hold, while Zhou Man and I are looking at the situation, and Zheng Shao is on the side. Xiao Yuanzheng glanced at Zhou Man, and seeing that she had nothing to add, he knew that she did not intend to use acupuncture to relieve the pain of King Gong before starting, so she simply did not mention it. After discussing it, Everyone stood in their own positions. The guards also stepped forward. The two held King Gong's upper body and the two held his left leg. Just before King Gong was about to speak, Imperial Physician Zheng stuffed a cloth-wrapped cork into his mouth, so Xiao Yuan picked up scissors and cut the trousers on his right leg to his thigh, motioning Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng to come forward. The two stepped forward and hugged each other. Xiao Yuan was touching his bones with his hands. Prince Gong couldn't help trembling. Although it wasn't too painful, there was always a terrifying feeling in his heart. Just as he was panicking, Xiao Yuan Zheng had already shouted, 1, 2, 3, pull. Imperial Physician Zheng and Imperial Physician Lu exerted force on both sides at the same time, and a burst of pain radiated from their bones in an instant. King Gong's eyes widened, and he couldn't help struggling violently. The guards were ready to hold him tightly. Zheng Gu and Zheng Xiao stepped forward to help Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng. The four of them hugged one leg and pulled to both sides at the same time, while Xiao Yuan Zheng and Man Bao closely watched the changes in the bones. Xiao Yuan Zheng relies entirely on his hands, constantly pressing to feel the changes in his bones. Man Bao not only presses, but also pays points to Keek to continuously scan the broken leg data. She felt that it was difficult to find a bone like King Gong's that had both long and crooked bones, as well as broken and crooked bones. The scanning data could obtain the motion trajectory of the bones when the force was applied. The patient will have experience. After pulling it out a few times, Prince Gong howled silently, his mouth stuffed with cloth could only make a whimper, and tears flowed down his face. The emperor couldn't bear to look at it. He turned his back and walked to the side. Xiao Yuanzhen's expression did not change much. He felt that the bones were being straightened, so he instructed Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng to change their strength, and adjusted the position of their legs, and everyone continued to pull. Xiao Yuanzheng carefully touched the bones again, nodded slightly, and said, "One of them is straight, and now I try to fix the crooked one." Man Bao also reached out and touched it, and also felt it was correct. Then she glanced at the data scanned by Keek. The discounted bone was indeed correct, and the crooked one was barely correct. It's still a little bit closer, but the little bit that is long and crooked is still crooked. Xiao Yuan was giving everyone a rest, and then took off the cork from Prince Gong's mouth and asked the palace maid to wipe his sweat and drink water for him. He said softly, "Your Highness, take a rest, don't move your legs, otherwise the bones that you just straightened will easily become crooked again." Prince Gong, who wanted to hug his leg and cry bitterly, didn't dare to move for a moment. Xiao Yuanzheng and Man Bao discussed the angle of exertion for a while, then took a rest and then started again. This time it will only be more painful than the last time, because it was just stretching the long legs. This time it was directly pressing on the long crooked bones. Followed by a long leg stretch. It was the first time he saw the prince. He saw Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man occupying one side. They directly rubbed the position where Prince Gong's leg was broken, and then stretched and pressed to both sides, while Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng took advantage of the opportunity to stretch. Leg stretches. In this way, the long and crooked bones were slowly separated and stretched. The pain was obvious. Prince Gong struggled more violently than before. Roar was still watching the lively prince. "What are you doing? Don't come and help." When the prince heard this, he immediately rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward to hold his left leg with the other two guards. King Gong finally fainted in pain. Xiao Yuanzheng and the others had to suspend. It should be said that Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man suspended. Lu Tai and Zheng Tai also took two young people to keep stretching. Man Bao gave King Gong an injection to wake him up, and Xiao Yuanzheng gave him a prescription after seeing his pulse. When King Gong woke up and they continued, the emperor was heartbroken, but this time he insisted. No matter how much King Gong cried and begged, he didn't agree to stop first. The 6 people were busy from morning to half afternoon, and they all collapsed when they finally gave King Gong good medicine and tied his legs. Man Bao was okay, tired and hungry, but his face was a little pale, but Imperial Physician Lu and Xiao Yuanzheng were not young, and their hands were shaking slightly. A few people poured a cup of tea, and before they had time to eat, they went to report the situation to the emperor. 2 bones, the newly discounted one is connected, and if you take good care of it, it should be the same as before, but the other one. Xiao Yuanzheng paused and then said, the crooked part is still a little curved, not to mention that Prince Gong can't bear the pain of stretching. Even if it is bearable, it is difficult to straighten it all. As long as you don't move around, you won't be able to tell if you walk slowly after you grow up. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1977. The emperor was already mentally prepared, and his face did not change much. He turned to look at Zhou Man and asked, do you have anything to add? After thinking about it, Man Bao said, His Royal Highness Prince Gong still has to continue to lose weight, but it is not suitable for exercise now, so we can only eat less and more meals to lose weight by dieting, otherwise the body will be too heavy and it will put a lot of pressure on the bones. Even the connected bones may bend again in the future. Xiao Yuanzheng didn't expect this, because he felt that when Prince Gong's bones were bent again due to the force, it would be more than 10 years later. However, he still expressed his approval, believing that Prince Gong should not get fat anymore. The emperor nodded thoughtfully, his eyes slid back and forth over several people, and finally appointed Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Manlai to be responsible for Prince Gong's injury. No way, he looked all the way down, it seems that the 2 people are the best at the bone-setting method. Xiao Yuanzheng and Man Bao all breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts, and still handed it over to the 2 of them, indicating that the emperor did not suspect that Zhou Man was involved in this matter, and was also willing to give Xiao Yuanzheng a chance to make up for his faults. Then they have to be careful in the next 3 months, at least they must not have any more crooked bones. Prince Gong didn't know anything about this. He was lying on the couch like a dead fish that had been marinated. The palace maid and the maid carefully wiped his sweat and changed his clothes. If it wasn't for the occasional heaving of his chest, he could hardly see it. People are still alive. The prince stood by and watched, couldn't help sneering in his heart, turned around and went out. He happened to hear that the emperor asked Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man to be in charge of Prince Gong, so he stepped forward and said, Father, Zhou Man has to give the mother and the queen. As for Mingda to see a doctor, I might as well leave it to Imperial Physician Zheng. The emperor glanced at the prince and said, she is also in charge of the empress and Mingda. Anyway, they all follow the way. When they come to see the doctor, they follow the way. That's it? Xiao Yuan was listening with his eyes down. When he led the crowd back to the Thai hospital for dinner, he found an opportunity to be alone with Zhou Man. You are now in charge of 3 masters by yourself, which shows that your majesty values you, now too much. You are the only one in the hospital, if your majesty, and I recommend you to be the head of the hospital. This is impossible, Man Bao interrupted Xiao Yuanzheng directly. Let's not say that His Majesty will not agree. Even if His Majesty agreed, I can't convince the public in the hospital. Xiao Yuanzheng, my qualifications it's too shallow, not to mention Imperial Dr. Lu and Imperial Dr. Lu, even Imperial Dr. Tan and Imperial Dr. Zheng have more qualifications than me. Furthermore, I don't want to be a court official. Xiao Yuanzheng raised his eyebrows. You didn't say that before. I saw your sullenness in the past 2 days, and your attitude was much different from before. Why, do you have other ideas? After thinking about it for a while, Man Bao felt that even if Xiao Yuanzheng was removed from the post of director of the hospital, his prestige in the Taiyuan hospital would not be weakened much. I thought for a while, and after these things in the palace were settled, I would resign. Xiao Yuanzheng. It took him a while to find his own voice, and he persuaded in the gentlest tone possible, Are you frightened by this Prince Gong incident? Don't be afraid, let alone the prince's daughter, even the concubines of the harem will use this kind of self-mutilation method. There are very few, and this is the time. Man Bao shook his head and said, no, I just think I'm still young, I still have a lot of medical skills I haven't learned, and I haven't seen a lot of diseases. I want to go out to study. She said, before, because I was too young, it was inconvenient to go out, and I had to study, but now that I am a little older, and I have been an official and have seen the world, even if I go out, my parents will not be too worried. Xiao Yuanzheng believed that she was a ghost, so why did he think that he could do anything in the past, but now his words are so humble and his actions are so arrogant. By the way, 2 days ago, she even bypassed Imperial Physician Lu and directly arranged for Zheng Gu and the three of them, and Xiao Yuan was having a headache in an instant. He felt that the most important thing now was not to show King Gong's legs, but how to retain this capable subordinate. Although Zhou Man just didn't care when he entered the Thai hospital, the two sides have been used to cooperation for more than a year. Although her qualifications in the Taiyuan hospital are not enough, her medical skills have also been recognized by the Taiyuan doctors, and they have learned a lot from each other. When she left, Xiao Yuanzheng hadn't figured out how to keep her, but Man Bao had already asked, do you want to recommend Imperial Physician Lu to take over the position of Yuanzheng? Xiao Yuanzheng was a little embarrassed to hear the words, but it was true that the entire Imperial Hospital had the ability and qualifications to replace him. One was Imperial Physician Lu, and the other was Imperial Physician Lu. Xiao Yuanzheng chose Imperial Physician Lu with a public heart and a selfish heart. In the heart of the public, Imperial Physician Lu has a high prestige in the Imperial Hospital, and he has a gentle personality. For selfishness, Imperial Physician Lu has a good relationship with him and is older. If he takes over, after a few years, Xiao Yuanzheng will be able to take over again. But Imperial Physician Lu is different. Imperial Physician Lu is a few years younger than Xiao Yuanzheng, and it is when he is ambitious. If he takes over and he does not make mistakes in the future, then Xiao Yuan is afraid that he will never have a chance to return to the original point in his life. He also made no secret of his selfishness and asked Zhou Man, what do you think of Imperial Dr. Lu? Man Bao naturally agreed that in the Imperial Hospital, she has the most cooperation with Imperial Physician Lu, but her relationship with Imperial Physician Lu is not very good, so she naturally prefers Imperial Physician Lu. So the two came to an agreement. After all, Man Bao is a 6th grade Imperial doctor, and has a bit of a say in the Imperial Hospital. If she also follows Xiao Yuanzheng to support the Imperial Dr. Lu, then this matter is inseparable. The two sides looked at each other and temporarily settled on this matter. The Queen's condition stabilized, and Prince Gong's leg was attached. Everyone arranged a shift, and Man Bao was able to rest for the night, so she returned to Chongquen Museum with her medicine box. When she went back, it was the last class in the Chongquen Hall. Only the Zhenji mansion in front was walking around and doing errands. The Chongquen Hall in the back was quiet. She stopped to look when she passed by. Examination paper. She carried the medicine box and turned to the offices of the gentleman next to her. When the attendants in the office saw Man Bao, they were slightly surprised and said with a smile, "Come to Zhuangxi to speak." After Man Bao saluted, he replied yes. The lecturers said, "Zhuangxi Jiao has gone to give a lecture to the prince, I'm afraid he will come back later." The attendants warmly invited, "Lord Zhou Xiao, why don't you just sit and wait for a while?" Man Bao refused, and planned to go back to wash and rest first, and it would be the same for everyone to come back after school later. The attendants could only watch her leave with regret. They still liked to chat with her, and they mainly wanted to inquire about the situation in the harem. They only vaguely heard that the queen, princess, and Prince Gong in the palace were all sick, but the crown prince was very happy these 2 days, especially today, except for the stinky face a few days ago, so they felt strange. After all, this is the Chongqing Museum. They are considered to be the prince's group, so naturally they want to know more. It's a pity that Man Bao didn't give them this chance and left after saying goodbye. On my birthday the day before yesterday, my book friends crowdfunded a Silver Alliance for me. It was the first time I received such a surprise. I was very happy, and I am very grateful for the support of many book friends. Special thanks, Song, and Song, Gray Spirit, Walking Around for a While, Rouge Tears, Mo Yan, Hanjian Drunk, Snowflakes, Gui Kingxiang, Aning, My Love Hall, Jinyi Wei Yuan, Zizi, Zatu Clear Tears, Scholarly Menuan, Silan, Zuzu, Mewtwo, Ankan, Kikai, Succulent and Prosperous, Yu Hang Hang, Rabbit Number 7, Flowers Don't Eat Green Onions, Autumn, and Smashed, QWL, Cheng Cheng Potato Mom, Huaxukan Mengshang Years, Chunting, WY Wu, Acacia Bean 1968, Feng Hero, Meow Meow. Yellow Orange, Sparrow, Jing, Huatingzi, Thriving, The Little Fat Girl Needs to Be Right Energy, Ah Shen is the God of God, the Tongbao of the Lang family, Mo Union, Like Jade with the Wind, A Green Leaf, Dolphins Listening to the Wind, Street Corners at Sunset, Flowers Blooming Pinelia, Radiant Waves, Starting Point WRRR, Luwenzori, Jade, Plum, Zixi, Tang Dakiu, Kristen, Qian, Cheazai, Awa, Binghen, Dialianhua, Ella, Li Yulai, Plum, Kanglang Linfen, Glass Heart, /U003 Kai /U003 E point. Yuan Wang, Luoluo, LL, Canoe, and Fish, Chaos, Don't Pay Attention to Me, Hey. Girl, Half of the Sun, Flowers Are Painted, The Road is Long. Far Away, Deng Xinlai, Wang Shu, What is the Sad Painting Fan, Xiaolu Meza 1140, Shuxian, The Coolness of Summer, A Company at Waliu, Young Master Wan Yu, Ching Ching, Yang Shu and his wife are also surnamed Yang, Mabai, if, in 15 years, Princess Fu was unparalleled in the world, with a violent temper, Paul Arisen, Hai Chiao. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1978. She hadn't come back to live for several days. As soon as she arrived in the courtyard, the maid who served her came up to listen to her orders. Man Bao said, I want to take a bath when I draw water. The palace maid should go down and help her fetch water. Man Bao opened the medicine box, sorted out the contents, and took out the pulse paper she recorded in the past few days. First, she studied the ink and wrote down the medicine and acupuncture they used for the queen these days, and waited for her. This is all summed up in the notebook. The notebook is stuffed into the space, and the palace maid has also boiled the water and sent it. No way, this is not the time to take a bath, so there is no hot water in their small kitchen, and they have to be boiled immediately if they need to be used. After she brought the water in and poured it into the tub, and filled it with cold water, Man Bao found his clothes and said, Thank you, I'll do the rest myself. The palace maid responded, bowed, and stepped back. It's not tiring to serve Zhou Man, because she doesn't like people to wait in front of her, and she does most of the things by herself, including cleaning pen and ink. Unlike the maid next door, who takes care of the students in Chongqing Hall, he even has to instruct the maid to change clothes in the morning. The newly delivered maid was chosen by the crown princess for her later, no matter who she was, at least she was much simpler than Suyu. Since she came to her side, Man Bao no longer felt that way of being spied on. Man Bao took a hot bath and completely relaxed. When she got dressed and yawned and fell asleep, she finally heard the Chongqing Hall ring the school bell. She felt a little more energetic, got up and closed the door to look for it. Past. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were walking together and were about to walk quickly to the cafeteria. When he looked up and saw Man Bao coming from a distance, Bai Shan couldn't help but trot forward, ran up to her and asked, "You come back already?" Man Bao was also very happy to see his friends, and nodded again and again, "I'm back, I'm staying here tonight, and I can come back in the future except on duty." Bai Shan heard the sound and knew Yi, which meant that the queen, and even Prince Gong's condition had stabilized. He couldn't help grinning happily. Seeing Bai Erlang and Yin or them also coming, he took her hand and said, "Let's go to dinner together." Man Bao said, "I still want to report to my husband to be safe, so as not to worry about my husband and my family. She hasn't been in the Chongquen Museum these days, and her husband couldn't find her to arrange her homework. Maybe the family didn't know what was going on in the palace, but Mr. Zhuang definitely knew, so she had to report to her for safety." Bai Shan said, "Don't worry, Mr. is still at the prince's place and hasn't come back. It's too late to look for it after we have eaten." Bai Erlang nodded again and again. Every time he goes out of school, Mr. has to stay in the Chongquen Museum for a while to copy or read books, and he won't leave the palace so early. When Man Bao heard the words, he turned around and followed them to eat in the cafeteria. Neither Bai Shan nor Bai Erlang asked her about the situation of the harem, and Yin he also did not ask in tacit agreement. Feng Zonping, who was sitting on the table beside him, scratched his ears, but it was difficult to ask. Bai Shan helped her open her food box and said, "My cousin and auntie have come to Beijing. Can you leave the palace after a 2-day break?" Man Bao did the math. The queen's condition can no longer be on duty day and night, but Prince Gong's place has to be watched for at least 4 or 5 days to avoid accidents, so she shook her head and said, "Maybe she won't be able to get out." Bai Shan felt a little regretful. "Then what do you want? I'll bring it in from outside the palace for you. I want to eat the Shaozai noodles made by my sister-in-law, but unfortunately you can't bring it in." Bai Erlang raised his head and said, "Sir said that my father brought a lot of pickled bamboo shoots from the village, and when you can go out next time, we will find a way to buy some beef back, and let Mrs. Joe make beef with bamboo shoots for us." Shaozai. Man Bao swallowed and nodded. Bai Shan said, "The autumn harvest is about to begin, and beef is hard to buy. In winter, more old cows and bad cows are slaughtered." Yin Or thought for a while and said, "I'll ask someone to look for it, I should be able to find it." The three Bai Shan looked at him with admiration. This is the privileged class. Yin Or just smiled. Lu Huan on the side immediately said, "Remember to call me that day, I also want to go to your house to play." Bai Erlang said, "You want to eat noodles, right?" Lu Huan smiled and said, "They're all classmates, so why be so stingy?" Everyone just said some nonsense, and left the cafeteria after eating. When there were only 4 people in private, Man Bao said to Bai Erlang, "I heard Princess Changjio say that the emperor has already met the Ren and Huo families, and Master Bai and the others will know when they enter the capital, so I think His Majesty will summon them in a few days, and when you go back to Huo Mu, you can just tell Master Bai the precautions in the palace." Bai Erlang nodded again and again, wondering if his father was nervous, but he was quite nervous anyway. But it is a pity that the emperor did not give them this opportunity. On the 3rd morning, Bai Shan and the others just went out of the palace, and they met Mr. Bai and Mrs. Bai, who were dressed up in the palace outside the palace gate. The two sides met, their mouths wide open. Master Bai raised his hand to say hello to his son, but the chamberlain who came to announce their entry into the palace directly reminded, "Master Bai, His Majesty is still waiting, please." Mr. Bai's many words were pressed into his heart, and after nodding with Bai Erlang, he was about to follow the servant into the palace. Bai Shan was the first to return to his senses, and quickly pulled Bai Erlang forward, saluted Master Bai and called Uncle Tang, and then smiled at the servant, "I'm sorry to leave the palace early in the morning." He quietly stuffed a purse into the hand of the waiter and said with a smile, "We and Uncle Cousin have not seen each other for a year. I didn't expect to meet here." Let their father and son talk. The servant hesitated for a while, not only looking at money, but also looking at Bai Shan's face, not to mention Lord Zhou Xiao. So the chamberlain took the purse and whispered, "Then you two, hurry up. Your Majesty is still waiting for an audience in the palace." Bai Shan responded quickly. Bai Erlang took the time to whisper to his parents and let them behave well, but he really wanted to be Mingda's consort. Seeing that he didn't get to the point after talking for a long time, Bai Shan pulled him aside and said to Master Bai, "Uncle Tang, don't be nervous when you meet your Majesty, just be polite. Our Bai family is friendly and harmonious. Big brother Daguan is promising again, he will inherit the incense and support the family in the future. Erlang originally only needs to be at ease, so everything does not have to be forced." Master Bai moved in his heart and understood Bai Shan's suggestion. He just then gave his son a dissatisfied look. He was really stupid. He said for a long time that Bai Shan's words didn't work. He responded, and seeing that the chambermaid was already secretly urging him, he gave Bai Shan and Bai Erlang a slight nod to tell them to be careful when they went back, and then followed the chambermaid into the palace with Mrs. Bai. By the time Master Bai and Mrs. Bai walked to the Taiji Hall, it was already 2/4 of an hour later, and it was early morning, but now the sun came out early, the temperature rose rapidly, and the two of them were sweating. Mr. Bai has some regrets. If I had known, I would have listened to Mr. Zhuang's uniforms. I don't know if it would be rude to see His Majesty later. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1979. The Emperor met Master Bai and his wife in Taiji Hall, naturally, not for the reason of kissing them, but for an excuse. The Emperor said that he hadn't returned to Longzhou for a long time. Coincidentally, the ancestral home of Master Bai was also Longzhou. Although his family branch had been in Longzhou for many years, the Emperor was stunned to ignore it, so he summoned him to ask about the customs of Longzhou. Fortunately, because of Mrs. Liu, Master Bai was still familiar with Longzhou, so he told the Emperor about the changes in Longzhou and what remained the same. Local customs and other things are just excuses. The Emperor quickly brought the topic to the affairs of his children. From the hardships of parenting, to the sadness of the children's disobedience, to the difficulties of the children's marriage, and worries about the future, the two people had a deep exchange. Of course, the Emperor also asked about the local actions of the Bai family, in order to examine the style of the Bai family. The two of them talked for an hour. The Queen took medicine, had needles, and changed the medicine stickers. Seeing that there was no movement in the front hall, she couldn't help but get worried, and she simply asked Aunt Chang to go to the front hall to find someone. "Just tell me. I want to see Mrs. Bai." Hearing that, Man Bao, who was packing the medicine box, couldn't help but raised his head and winked at Mingda, who was sitting. Mingda glanced at her and said nothing, but Chang Yu received a message from Man Bao, and bumped Mingda with his shoulder, then grinned at her. Mingda didn't feel anything at first, but when the two laughed, he became a little nervous and embarrassed. Aunt Chang went to the front hall to invite someone. The Emperor and Mrs. Bai didn't say a word. She just wanted the Queen to see Mrs. Bai's character and see if she was getting along well, so she waved her hand and asked Aunt Chang to lead the people. Going down, he invited Master Bai to play chess in the study. Playing chess can also tell a person's character and behavior. Master Bai often plays chess with Mr. Zhuang, but this is the first time he has played chess with the Emperor. I don't know how good the Emperor's chess skills are. If he is too good, will he seem too bad? If it is not good, is it better for him to win the Emperor, or is it better to let it go? Master Bai struggled to leave with the Emperor, while Mrs. Bai nervously followed Aunt Chang to the back. As soon as she entered the apse, She was asked to wait outside. Aunt Chang went to report first, and only when the queen was dressed and sat on the head would someone announce her in. Mrs. Bai lowered her head and went in nervously. She raised her head slightly, and did not dare to look directly at the queen, so she looked at her skirt and knelt down to salute. The women of the people pay their respects to the empress. The queen smiled and asked her to get up. After getting up, Mrs. Bai wiped the sweat from her forehead. When she raised her head slightly, she saw that there were still people sitting on the chair next to her. Man Bao, who was sitting at the bottom, was smiling at her and meeting her eyes. And winked at her. Mrs. Bai's heart loosened slightly when Lao Gao mentioned it. She didn't dare to do any unnecessary actions, so she just stood with her head down. The queen was very kind and said with a smile, "Sit down and talk, come and give me a seat." Someone took a low stool and put it in the center of the hall for Mrs. Bai to sit down. The queen reassured her, "Don't be nervous, let's talk." When did Mrs. Bai arrive in the capital? Mrs. Bai bowed and said, "It's been 4 days." The queen smiled and asked, "Is it safe all the way?" The questions were all very common. Mrs. Bai slowly relaxed, bowed, and said, "Thanks to your majesty and the empress, we were all safe along the way, and it took only 8 days to reach the capital." The queen also talked a lot with Mrs. Bai, and finally pointed at Mingda and Chang Yu. "These are my 2 daughters, Mingda and Chang Yu. Have you never met my wife?" Mrs. Bai immediately stood up and bowed to the 2 princesses. Chang Yu sat down and accepted it, nodding slightly, omitting her salute, while Mingda bowed slightly and turned back half salute, and also let her omit the salute. After talking, the queen also kept Mrs. Bai to eat together, and Man Bao was also kept. The emperor, who had only played 2 games of chess with Master Bai, knew that she was very satisfied with Mrs. Bai as soon as he heard that the queen was staying for dinner, so he couldn't help but glance at Master Bai. Although he doesn't look very smart, but he is honest and kind-hearted, and he plays chess just fine, but he is very respectful to him as an emperor, and he is not as flattering as the Ren family. Although it is a side branch, it is from a noble family, and the etiquette is not bad. So the emperor thought about it, and simply left the master to eat. By the time the couple could come out of the Taiji palace, it was already too late, and Man Bao also had to return to the Taiji hospital to hand over shifts, so he and the maid would send the person to the palace gate. As he wiped his sweat and walked forward, Master Bai refused. "The palace gate is so far away, you don't need to send it, go back quickly." Man Bao smiled and said, "It doesn't matter, the hospital is not too far from the palace gate." "Master Bai, His Majesty has summoned 3 people during this time, and you are the only one left to eat." When Master Bai heard the news, he instantly let go of most of his heart, knowing that their family had the upper hand now. He quietly glanced at the chamberlain who was leading the way in front of him, and whispered to Man Bao, "Man Bao, you are on good terms with Princess Mingda. When you see her, say good things to your junior brother." Man Bao nodded, indicating that he understood. Master Bai is completely relieved. It is good to have acquaintances. It was a good move to let the boy Erlang follow Shan Bao to worship Mr. Master Bai stroked his beard proudly, feeling refreshed and not feeling any hotter. Man Bao sent them to the gate of the palace before returning to Tai Hospital. Today is the holiday day. There are a lot fewer people in the Taiyuan Hospital. Doctors Lu and Dr. Lu are off. Dr. Zheng is instructing Zheng Gu and the 3 on how to find the files and put the pulse records into the files. Sometimes the imperial physicians are too busy, and all these things need medical assistance. It's just that few medical assistants can learn these things before they enter the palace. Most medical assistants have to start from managing pharmacies and repeat things they have done very well before. But Zheng Gu and the 3 of them have backdoors, or 3 backdoors. Grandfather, uncle, and master are all imperial physicians. Some people give advice, and other medical assistants can only envy them. As soon as Man Bao came in with the medicine box, Zheng Xiao immediately stepped forward to take the medicine box. Lu Yunu went to pour tea for the master, and Zheng Gu pulled the chair away for her to sit down. Zheng Tai, who was still standing beside him. Man Bao took a sip of the warm tea and asked Imperial Physician Zheng, "Where's Xiao Yuan Zheng? Going to see Prince Gong. How long does it take you to puncture the queen and apply the patch?" Man Bao avoided the hardship and said lightly, "The Niang kept me for dinner, I can't refuse." The Empress was indeed more affectionate towards Zhou Man, and Imperial Physician Zheng did not ask much, but said, "Then you should be on duty in the hospital. In the afternoon, I will take Dr. Lu to the Queen Mother's palace." Man Bao nodded and asked, "How is the Queen Mother?" "It's still the same. I didn't dare to tell her about the illness of the Queen, Princess Mingda and Prince Gong." After that, she flipped through the book, and quickly found 2 pulse cases for her, yesterday's pulse case. Man Bao took a look and knew what she knew. She nodded and said to Zheng Gu, "I will be on duty in the palace of King Gong at night. You come with me, and go to rest now." Zheng Gu responded with some excitement. "See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1980. The emperor came over from the front hall and sent his 2 daughters to take a nap. Then he sat on the side of the cave and spoke to the queen. "Although the Bai family is small, it is fortunate that it is a good family. Although this Master Bai has no fame, he has not lost it. The etiquette of the clan." The queen chuckled and said, "Mrs. Bai is also lovable. I look better than the Huo family." The emperor had met the parents of the Ren family and the Huo family before, because he felt that Mr. Ren was too flattering, and the flattery made him uncomfortable, so he was more satisfied with the Huo family. Moreover, the Huo family is also the family of officials, and it is also a side branch of the aristocratic family, and its background is much deeper than that of the Bai family. The emperor pondered and asked, "Have Mingda met Mrs. Bai?" The queen smiled and nodded. The emperor asked, "How does she feel?" Now, apart from the emperor, everyone around Mingda probably knows what she is thinking, and the queen didn't even bother, but nodded along with his words. Mingda also thinks that Mrs. Bai is easy to get along with. The emperor fell silent, and he was still reluctant to give up when he was about to make up his mind. The queen took a cup of tea from Aunt Chang and handed it to the emperor, and asked, "I haven't been able to see my mother these days. How is my mother's health?" The emperor returned to his senses and said, "I went to see it this morning. I slept more and woke up less." The emperor said this for a while, and finally sighed, "I will find a time to see Bai Cheng again, and let Mingda come out to see him at that time. If she is willing, she will quickly settle her marriage. He is also worried about delaying his daughter's marriage." The queen nodded and knew that this matter was inseparable. After eating in the evening, she reached out and touched Mingda's hair and sighed, "Mingda has grown up too." As smart as Mingda, he realized the deeper meaning of his mother. His little face couldn't help blushing. When the emperor on the side saw it, he couldn't hold back his heart, and the question that he had been neglecting came up. "By the way, did Mingda know Bai Cheng?" From the beginning to the present, she seems to have never expressed her dislike for Bai Cheng, which means. The emperor's eyes were full of resentment for a while, and after the 2 girls left, he couldn't help but ask the queen, "What does Mingda think of Bai Cheng?" The queen glanced at him and said, "It's just acquaintance. We've traveled together a few times, so the marriage will naturally depend on the fate of our parents." Although the queen is avoiding the important and taking the light, the emperor is still more comfortable. Although he is still unwilling, he still recognizes some Bai Cheng in his heart. It's better to find someone your daughter likes than to find someone she doesn't like. The emperor fell asleep a little embarrassed. Man Bao also led Zheng Gu to guard the palace of King Gong. Recently, the harem concubines and the little prince and the little princess are all fine, and they don't even have minor problems such as scratching their skin and sneezing, so in the afternoon, Manbao will file the queen's pulse file, and then he can go back to the small room and lie down to catch up on sleep. She was in good spirits at the moment, and she didn't feel sleepy when she arrived at Prince Gong's palace. They were mainly responsible for keeping his legs from moving and crooked, and at the same time making him less painful. However, Manbao didn't give King Gong any painkillers, he just prescribed some painkillers according to the old practice. But the pain-relieving medicine can't be drunk too much, and the effect of the medicine will wear off after 3 or 2 hours, so from the second half of the night, King Gong began to hum. He cried out in pain, and the people in his hall basically couldn't sleep. Manbao sleepily watched the maid and the servants continue to bring him tea and water and let him toss, and she sat and watched. After King Gong hummed, he turned his head and saw that she was sitting on a chair with empty eyes and looking in his direction. She couldn't help being startled, and then became unhappy. "Joe man, this king hurts a lot." Manbao's eyes slowly fell on Prince Gong, and it took a while for her brain to receive his message. She yawned and said, "Your Highness, it hurts to have a broken leg." King Gong. He was choked for a while before he found the words, "This king is asking you to relieve the pain of this king." He is not a child, so Manbao didn't bother to coax him, and said, "If you take too much painkiller, you will become stupid. You have already taken it today, do you want to take it again?" They are all adults, and the consequences can be chosen by themselves. Prince Gong was completely speechless now, and after a while, he cried out for pain, and then he had to drink water, go to the toilet, eat, and rinse his mouth, or screamed about the pain in his body. Anyway, he didn't let anyone stop. Manbao let him call, and said to Zhenggu, who was a little nervous on the side, "Go to sleep first, and take over for me in an hour." She didn't believe it. Prince Gong could still call for one night. Prince Gong really can't be called for one night. There are many people serving in his palace, so why is he not tossing himself while tossing others? Think water is so delicious and food is so delicious? King Gong successfully tossed himself so hard that he could only endure the pain and continued to lie down, occasionally groaning in pain. Manbao faintly said, "My lord, this is self-inflicted sin." Prince Gong's humming couldn't help but stop for a while, and before he could react, Manbao yawned, got up, returned to the ear room, and fell asleep directly on the bed. They didn't have to keep guarding Prince Gong all the time. After 4 or 5 days, most of the swelling on the legs had subsided, and the pain wasn't that much. After the bones were no longer displaced and deformed, they didn't need to be on duty at night. Just to be on the safe side, I still have to come and see it twice a day. But the ointment was changed only once every 3 days. They came here to ask if Prince Gong was tampering. Of course, the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital no longer believed what Prince Gong said. They mostly asked the people who served him. The emperor doesn't seem to trust the son so much anymore, so this time he directly ordered people to guard him for 12 hours. Even when he sleeps at night, he has to fall asleep on his feet. Even if King Gong turns over several times at night, the emperor knows it. Of course, the people in the palace were very painful, but Prince Gong didn't feel any better. He didn't even have the space to complain to his confidants. What I see every day is either Zhou Man's disgusting face or Xiao Yuanzhen's old face. It is because he is too aggrieved, but he seems to be in good health. Although his heart hurts, he does not fall ill. Xiao Yuanzheng saw that he was depressed, but he just politely told him not to think too much and to recuperate in peace. Manbao actually prescribed a dose of Ningxuan decoction when he prescribed the medicine, but the effect was just average, mainly because he didn't want to prescribe it himself. But just as King Gong gradually improved, the emperor finally ordered Bai Erlang and Mingda to marry. The imperial decree arrived on the day Manbao and the others rested. After 2 decades, she rarely returned home. Yin-or promised to send them some beef at noon to make Shaozai noodles, but the beef hadn't arrived yet, so she first came to the Ministry of Rights officials. In addition to the officials of the Ministry of Rights, there is also Gu Zhong who holds the imperial decree. There are servants who come to report in advance, so that they are ready to receive the decree. Master Bai is mentally prepared, and he is also dizzy with excitement at the moment, while Mrs. Bai is the whole person was stupid, sitting in the chair for a while and didn't move. Thank you Rong for her birthday reward. Well, I owe a lot. I plan to pay it back later when I have the opportunity. I will pay everyone's monthly pass first, so I will add one more now. See you tomorrow.